all of those functions, and they're declared must override in Visual Basic, which means that you can't put any code here. They're just templates, okay? So you have to implement these in that data provider project. All right, so this is the set of common functions, and these all return iData readers in this case. And then this is where we get real scant now on the on the code. Is the rest of the things in the components folder are info objects, and let me just show you one. Okay, info objects and controllers. So if we look at the suggestion info, all right, what it is, it's a business object that contains the data that you're going to bind to your form, essentially. Okay, so properties. So it's a set of properties. So you got a suggestion ID, a module ID, a suggestion type ID, who created it, what data was created, what the title, the description, and the module title were. Okay, those are all the things that were entered on that form, and they get stored in the database. So basically, it's a business object. That's all it is. That's going to get hydrated from your data provider interface by .NetNuke using these things called the CDO is the help me with this. It's the custom business object. So it's a custom business object hydrator or loader. Or what it uses reflection to load. Okay, so by definition, it's a little bit slow. So that's what this thing down here called iHydratable is. If you want to, you can actually implement a iHydratable, which copies the data from your data reader into your properties directly. So this is the manual way of doing it. That CDO thing kind of gets you away from having to write all this dirty code. You know, it sucks writing this stuff, right? So you let reflection do it until you're trying to build up really high performance, and then you go back and you implement iHydratable. Right? So basically, these business objects, there's one for everything that's going to be bound to a form or that's going to be used somehow in your application. And then there's a controller on top of it that actually is where the CDO, where the CDO stuff is. And let me show you the controller for that one, suggestion controller. So this is the thing that actually loads the data. So we just look, so for the functions that are called for that particular business object, I'm returning, all right, so you get the data provider instance add suggestion or the delete suggestion. So this is talking to that abstract data provider interface, okay? You pass in all the parameters you need, and basically, okay, so that's kind of a one-way in. So here's the CDO.fill object. So this is the thing that does the reflection-based loading of data into your business class. Unless you implement iHydratable, and it knows that you've done that, it uses reflection to see if you've implemented it. If you have, it calls your concrete function that loads. Otherwise, it uses reflection. Okay. So all of this data loading stuff happens in this business objects or business layer. Okay. Sorry, I keep trying to switch. All right. So that's the stuff that's in the SQL Data Provider project and in the business object layer here in this components folder. Everything else then is your user interface layer. So if we take a look at let's look at the settings module. We just look at the designer for it. Sorry, I got the file source. All right, so we can see in here then that user control that came up when I was adding suggestion types in the text, okay? So basically, this is the idea of building a .NetNuke module. So all you're building is a user control. Just this piece of functionality that's going to show on a page, and it gets injected into that shell, into that container. And this really should be a 2-hour session. So where I could show you how it gets injected in the container and all that. So this, you build your your controls here, and then you put your code behind. Let me just show you the code behind that goes with this particular one. Code. And in here we'll see all of the business logic. Whoops. I screwed up.
He added a C.
There we go. Yeah. I knew I typed something somewhere. Okay. So in here we've got okay. A lot of stuff to explain. I'm not going to explain all this stuff. So here's some base method implementations. You gotta load settings. You can update settings. There's a set of events for the class, like the command add, type add click, the delete clicks, things like that. So here, basically, I'm using my suggestions as a suggestion type controller, okay, and calling that add suggestion type method on it. Okay, so from your business logic, you're just going to call into that business layer class that you created down below. And it makes your user interface code pretty simple. You try to not do a whole lot of plumbing here. And in here is where you can do, where you make some of the decisions. I'm trying to think of where exactly let me look at this. Display suggestions, view code. I just want to find an example of where I'm doing something with permissions. Okay, so here's where it's saying on initial entry to page, fill the suggestions module combo box. This is the thing that had the name of the suggestion modules with the. So if the user is in the administrator role, okay, then we're going to call get suggestion modules all tabs. Otherwise, only list modules on this tab. So we call get suggestion modules this tab. All right, so there's two different stored procedures that return a little bit different data. So the thing that gets displayed in that drop-down list changes a little bit by which module is called, which stored procedure is called. So if it's a portal administrator, they get all the suggestions everywhere. If they're just a page viewer, they only get the things that are shown on that particular page. And here I'm using localization, localized data grid. Actually, there's a whole bunch of stuff that you get into in localization. That's also covered in the book in a separate chapter that I didn't have to deal with. But I wrote my code to be fully localized. There's a set of resource files behind everything here. If you look at the, I'm way over on time. I'm already way over. So actually, we're running into lunch. So
nobody wanted to eat, right?
Go ahead. All the food's gone.
So in the let's see here. Where am I trying to get to?
Local resource.
Local resource. Yes, that's where I'm going to go. Okay. So up here there are. So let's just look at like the settings page for again, since we've been looking at that. So this is actually an XML file, but they give you a nice little user interface. So what has happened here is there's a list of tags, okay, and there's a protocol for how you name your tags. So you see in this case, command add type dot text. All right, it's saying the text property of this control on the form called command add type. It's a command button, okay. Its value is add type, okay. So this is the English localization file. If I wanted to do German, I would create the .de, whatever this file, and add the German version of add type, and just drop it into the resource directory. And if your portal is running in German, you will get the German strings in all of your controls. Now, obviously, people who build user controls often just hard code all the strings right into the user controls. You don't want to do that. You want to use localization calls and use these tags. And then you can your portal can be localized, or your module can be localized very, very easily. Right? But you have to think about this up front.
Another thing that helps you with too is if like your boss comes up and says, "Hey, you know what? Marketing said that's a bad thing to say in that module." You don't have to rebuild the module to change the text.
Yeah, you just edit that XML file. You don't have to rebuild anything. Just so the portal administrator has full control over all the strings that come out in your entire module. Now, a couple of the things that I had there, the instructions to the user that showed on the suggestions module, those aren't strings that are in the resources. Those are things that are stored in the database. So in the case of those things, you actually have to go in and type in your own German language text if you want German or Spanish or whatever, that you use the settings control and you just type in the language that you want. It stores it in the database rather than in the resource file. Yes?
So in the case of your security module, back before where you showed that portal admins would be able to see all, could you just as soon not hard code that for portal admins and then allow them to select a security?
Do it by roles?
Yeah.
Well, that I just checked if it was in the admin role. Okay. You can check for any role you want. Okay. I mean, one of the nice things about DotNetNuke, which I always talk about when I'm talking about like portal management, is the roles system is completely up to you what you want to do with it. You create roles and put people in those roles, and then you assign those roles to your modules, and you define who can do what by the roles. So your custom module is the same way. You can define a set of roles that